American actor Philip is currently in a crowded Tokyo subway car during rush hour, preparing to go home, with an expression that reveals an indescribable fatigue. After unexpectedly gaining audience attention from a toothpaste commercial, Philip decided to stay in Tokyo to develop his career. He once had high hopes of starting a business here. However, this is already his 7th year in Tokyo. Day after day, he rushes between various filming locations, yet he can only play insignificant roles. Today is just another ordinary day occupied by busyness and trivialities. The next morning, Philip receives a call from his agent, learning that there is a performance in Saitama Prefecture at 10 a.m. that requires a foreign actor. The specific role is not clear, but as long as he can arrive on time in a black suit, he will receive a considerable payment. After rushing to the designated location, Philip discovers that it is actually a funeral. What surprises him even more is that the person in the coffin clearly shows signs of life. His task is to play a mourner and complete this absurd ceremony with the people present. After the funeral, a man named Shinji approaches Philip. It turns out that the entire funeral was a prearranged performance. Shinji runs a business called Neighbor Rental Family, which primarily provides temporary actors to clients who need to play family members or friends. The actor's responsibility is not to completely replace someone, but to help clients fill the roles that are absent in their lives. Just like the earlier funeral, it was actually a ceremony held by the client to explore the meaning of life. In a country that remains silent on psychological issues and even stigmatizes them, many people, under social pressure, dare not reveal their inner shortcomings and can only fulfill their wishes in this way. Shinji's company happens to lack foreign actors like Philip. At first, Philip finds this job absurd, but to make a living, he agrees to it. The first assignment Philip receives is to play the fiancé of a young woman. The client, named Yoshi, will soon move to Canada with her partner. She hopes to hold a traditional wedding that her parents have long anticipated before she leaves. The company has handled such wedding services many times and is familiar with the process. With the assistance of colleague Aiko, Philip confirms all the details of the ceremony, but he remains puzzled as to why Yoshi is unwilling to be honest with her parents. It turns out that Yoshi's partner is a woman. This is undoubtedly a huge shock for her conservative parents. Yoshi loves her parents deeply and values her choice and her love for her partner. She does not want to compromise and does not want to hurt her family with the truth. So this fictional wedding is the most thoughtful arrangement for her. However, on the day of the wedding, Aiko suddenly noticed that Philip, who was supposed to play the groom, had disappeared without a trace. At this time, there were only 10 minutes left before the ceremony began. As time ticked away, Aiko anxiously searched every corner of the wedding venue and finally found Philip curled up in a bathroom stall. Philip was filled with inner conflict, believing he was participating in an absurd deception that would disrupt the lives of others and betray the sincerity of two elders. But from Aiko's perspective, this job was not about helping the client deceive her family, but rather about helping Yoshi gain a chance for a new life. After the wedding, Yoshi would be able to leave for Canada with her lover without any worries, starting a new life. And her parents would also have a complete wedding memory to enjoy in their later years. If Philip were to back out now, it would not only ruin a ceremony, but also destroy the peace and hope for Yoshi's family in the future. With Aiko's encouragement, Philip finally mustered the courage to return to the wedding venue. He was tense throughout, until he caught a glimpse of the relief and satisfaction in Yoshi's parents' eyes as they looked at him, which made him feel somewhat at ease. The wedding ultimately concluded successfully. After the guests dispersed, Philip saw Yoshi embracing her lover, and the last bit of resistance in his heart dissipated, replaced by an unprecedented sense of fulfillment and warmth. It turned out that the feeling of helping others achieve their wishes was so beautiful. After successfully completing his first assignment, Shinji quickly arranged a new task for Philip. This time, he needed to play the role of a biracial girl's father. The girl's name was Mia, and she lived with her single mother. Previously, Mia's mother had been rejected when applying for schools for her daughter, and they needed a father's identity to pass the subsequent interview. To ensure the interview process went smoothly, Philip first had to make Mia believe that he was the father who had long been absent from her life. However, Philip had never experienced paternal love since childhood. He didn't even know how to communicate with a child, let alone play the role of a qualified father. And this was precisely the significance of this assignment. Philip could use this opportunity to make up for his own childhood lack of paternal love experience. Unlike the brief wedding with Yoshi, playing Mia's father was a long-term assignment. There were still 3 weeks until the school interview, during which Philip needed to visit Mia regularly to develop a bond with her. The next day was the day of their first meeting, and Philip repeatedly pondered the tone of each sentence at home. fearing that a single mistake would ruin this performance that was crucial to the girl's future. Mia's mother arranged to meet Philip in the community activity room. She had also prepared a lovely backpack for Philip to give to her daughter, hoping to bridge the gap between them. However, when Mia learned that the unfamiliar man before her was her father, who had been missing for many years, she did not show any joy. Instead, she turned and ran away, her small figure filled with resistance. It wasn't until Philip caught up with her and promised never to leave again that her attitude softened slightly. Mia then took her mother and left the activity room directly. Her obvious rejection made Philip feel a sense of retreat. If the person being entrusted already harbored resistance from the start, how could their future interactions progress? But Shinji believed that Mia was not rejecting Philip himself, but rather the irresponsible biological father who had left without a word. What Philip needed to do was not to replace anyone, but to patiently listen to the needs of this mother and daughter, assisting them in achieving their wish to succeed in the school interview. Meanwhile, Shinji introduced a new commission to Philip. The client was Masami, the daughter of veteran actor Kikuo. Kikuo was a well-known actor in his youth, having portrayed many deeply resonant characters. But as he aged, he unfortunately fell victim to dementia and was gradually forgotten by the entertainment industry. Masami hoped that Philip would play the role of a journalist, visiting her father to interview him and write his biography. She wanted to use this method to inform her father that he had not been forgotten by the world. Philip put on glasses, dressed as a journalist, and knocked on the door of Kikuo's house. He rarely immersed himself in reading and felt a bit anxious, fearing he might reveal a flaw. Fortunately, when Kikuo heard that a journalist had come to interview him, he became very excited, and his previous gloom vanished. Without further ado, he pulled Philip outside to bask in the sun and began to recount his acting stories from his youth. After leaving Kikuo's house, Philip had no time to rest and quickly changed into a suit to head to Mia's school. Today was the school's open day, and the children needed to complete their handicraft projects with their parents' accompaniment. When Mia saw Philip, she still wore a serious expression. At that moment, Mia noticed a classmate without a parent accompanying them and actively invited the other child to join her group. Philip immediately understood her intention and accompanied the two children in making crafts. He patiently helped pass scissors and glue, his gaze gentle, carefully maintaining the self-esteem of both children. When the school bell rang, Mia walked slowly to Philip, handed him the small jellyfish she had made, and then turned and ran away. Philip watched her figure. A warm current surged in his heart, and he couldn't help but feel a bit teary. Apparently, his clumsy efforts had quietly warmed the child's heart. Back at his residence, Philip carefully hung the jellyfish ornament in front of the window. The evening sun cast a gentle halo over it. He gazed quietly, increasingly understanding the meaning of this profession. Those performances he once regarded as absurd actually contained a warm power that comforts the heart. In addition to these two long-term commissions, Philip also takes on some sporadic temporary jobs, sometimes working as a waiter in a karaoke hall assisting guests in selecting songs, sometimes going to the apartments of young men to act as their temporary friends, sitting cross-legged on the carpet playing games and cheering for level-ups. These trivial and ordinary jobs are far from the acting dreams he longed for when he first arrived in Tokyo. But every time he sees the genuine smiles of his clients, Philip feels that this job may never bring him the fame and attention of the masses, yet it allows him to find satisfaction in those small moments. He gradually comes to love this profession, enjoying the feeling of filling others' loneliness and lighting up fleeting moments of joy through his performances. Since the last school open day, Philip and Mia's relationship has made a breakthrough. On this day, he specially took Mia to visit the aquarium. As they stepped into the underwater tunnel, the bluish light and shadows flowed above them. But Mia thought the projection effect was distorted and not as good as the real underwater scenery. However, in Philip's view, even if it is illusory, so what? At least it is beautiful enough, and the intention to create this beauty and convey goodness is real, and that is enough. Just as he is not Mia's real father, the time spent with her making crafts, taking her to the aquarium, and the feeling of wanting to protect her are all real. Philip is also mentally preparing Mia in advance. The commission will eventually end, and he cannot play her father forever. But he hopes that even after they part ways in the future, Mia can gain the confidence from the time they spent together, knowing she was loved steadfastly. At that moment, Philip received a call from his agent. He passed the audition for a film directed by a well-known director last month. The long-awaited opportunity has finally arrived, but Philip did not feel the expected excitement because the filming location is in South Korea, lasting 6 months, and he cannot manage the commissions here. He has worked hard to establish a close relationship with Mia, and it took a long time for her to lower her guard and be willing to trust him. Philip's emotions are complicated. He does not want to betray Mia's trust and is reluctant to leave her life. He did not immediately reply to his agent. On one side is a father-daughter-like bond, and on the other is an opportunity he has waited 7 years for. He has endured countless nights in Tokyo, moving between film sets, just to wait for this door to his dreams to open. But thinking of the little girl's eyes, from resistance to dependence, and recalling the promise he made to never leave again, he felt a lump in his throat, making it difficult to say even a single reply. That day, Philip went to visit Kikuo as usual. Since the commission originated from Kikuo's care for his daughter, the two inevitably talked about children. When Kikuo asked Philip if he had a daughter, Philip paused for a moment before answering, yes. How he wished Mia truly was his daughter, but he also knew he was just a temporary stand-in, and Mia had yet to fully open her heart to him. Kikuo sighed lightly and said, when children are young, it's best to spend as much time with them as possible. I was so busy with my career when I was young that I neglected my daughter, and it wasn't until I was old that I realized I had missed so many moments of her growth. As soon as he finished speaking, Kikuo's expression suddenly became dazed. He shouted that he needed to go to the bathroom, and before Philip could think much, Kikuo dashed out of the store and ran towards the road. If Philip hadn't caught him in time, the consequences would have been unimaginable. After sending Kikuo home, his daughter warned Philip he must never let his father act alone, because his dementia comes and goes, and no one knows what will happen in the next moment. Philip deeply remembered Kikuo's advice to spend more time with the children. During the local festival, Philip specially dressed Mia up and immersed her in the bustling crowd to share in the joy. The noisy drums and colorful lights filled the entire street with festive happiness. Mia was having a great time. So this is what it feels like to have a father? She took out her phone, proactively added Philip's contact information, and gave him a gift she had prepared in advance. When Philip returned home and opened the envelope, inside was a drawing Mia had given him, with clumsy strokes that contained sincere emotions. Philip almost instantly made a decision. Although the invitation from Korea was an opportunity he had longed for and could change his career, everything seemed insignificant compared to Mia. He called his agent and firmly declined the film amid the agent's confused questions. From then on, Philip and Mia's connection became even closer. The troubles of children may seem trivial in the eyes of adults, but Philip would patiently listen to her every time she finished speaking, then respond seriously. Philip's gentleness was completely different from his mother Hitomi's usual strictness. Mia confessed that she didn't want to take the final exam. If it were Hitomi, she would definitely frown and scold her for lacking consideration. But Philip just gently encouraged her, affirming her daily efforts and believing she could do it. Mia increasingly relied on Philip. Hitomi noticed this and couldn't help but remind Mia, don't get too close to Philip. What if he leaves again one day? Mia turned her head, unwilling to believe that the father, who had made a promise, would go back on his word. The daughter's reaction quietly stirred a hint of jealousy in Hitomi's heart. As the day of the school interview approached, Hitomi met with Philip to confirm details to avoid any mistakes. Philip reviewed the school information and felt that the academic pressure at this high school was too heavy, and he was reluctant to let Mia bear it. Hitomi immediately frowned. Philip was merely an actor she hired, not Mia's real father, so what right did he have to interfere in her educational plans? This clearly crossed the line. Moreover, her daughter was now much closer to him than to herself. A wave of regret surged in Hitomi's heart. She even began to lament why she had hired Philip in the first place. After confirming the details with Hitomi, Philip put on his glasses and went to visit Kikuo. Kikuo earnestly requested Philip to take him back to his hometown, and he must not let his daughter Masami know. In old age, sometimes the only thing left is one's own secrets. He hoped to revisit those past memories that even his daughter had never known before they completely faded away. But Philip did not agree. Masami's warning from last time still echoed in his ears. If Kikuo had an accident on the way, how would he explain it to his family? When Philip returned to the company, the person in charge, Shinji, was organizing client information in the archive room. Since founding Neighbor Rental Family, Shinji had handled countless assignments. These documents were not only a testament to his assistance to others in overcoming difficulties, but also the belief that supported him in maintaining this career. As soon as Shinji saw Philip, he informed him Mia's mother called, and the next meeting would be the last time he would spend with Mia. Because Mia relied too much on Philip, Hitomi believed this closeness posed a threat to their family. Philip found it hard to accept this news. He was reluctant to part with Mia and had not forgotten his promise to her. But the rules of this industry were such: no matter how deep the bond formed, as long as the client decided to terminate the contract, the actor must withdraw cleanly and leave no trace. Meanwhile, Kikuo learned that Philip was unwilling to accompany him to the countryside, and since he was unable to go alone, he angrily demanded that Philip not come again in the future. On the day of the school interview, Philip and Hitomi attended the review in the conference room. Hitomi's answers were filled with utilitarian boasting, recounting how her daughter had been busy with various tutoring classes since she was 5 and how fluent her English was. Philip, on the other hand, shifted the perspective in his evaluation of Mia. He took out Mia's artwork and showed it to the teachers one by one, expressing his admiration for the child's imagination. Although he was not Mia's real father, the love he felt for her was almost impossible to conceal. But Hitomi had already made up her mind. Her relationship with Philip was merely a mutually beneficial transaction. The goal was about to be achieved, and Philip no longer needed to play the role of Mia's father. In order to maintain this warm illusion and not hurt sensitive Mia, after the interview, Philip did not confess his temporary father identity to Mia, but instead lied that he was about to return to the United States. He thought Mia would cry, make a fuss, lose control of her emotions, and run away like she did when they first met. Unexpectedly, Mia jumped into his arms and repeatedly whispered words of longing. With a child's unique delicacy and sensitivity, perhaps she had already vaguely sensed that this suddenly appearing and soon-to-disappear man was not her biological father. But those afternoons spent visiting the aquarium, the time spent making crafts together, and the joy of weaving through the crowd at celebrations were all real. In Mia's heart, Philip had long become an irreplaceable father. After parting with Mia, Philip felt a void in his heart. He would often unconsciously recall the aquarium, the doodle gifted to him, and the warmth of Mia jumping into his arms to express her longing. But as Shinji said, separating from the client is a cruel yet unavoidable part of this job. He could only bury those warm fragments deep in his heart and slowly accept the ending. After work, Philip went to a bar for a drink with his colleague Aiko. Seeing him in low spirits, Aiko teased, "Since you're feeling this way, why not place another order at the company and hire someone to play the unforgettable role for you?" Aiko was curious about what role he would want to hire someone to play if he were the client. Philip's answer was mother. He lost his father at a young age, and his mother single-handedly supported his world, giving him all her love. Philip noticed the red marks on Aiko's cheeks, and upon further questioning, learned that Aiko's job was harder than he imagined. Aiko often had to play the lover of an unfaithful husband, apologizing to the original spouse, and thus often suffered beatings. Chatting with Aiko made Philip realize the essence of this acting job should not be a cold transaction, but rather a determination to fulfill others no matter what. Spending time with Mia made him truly appreciate the weight of companionship and protection. Thinking of Kikuo, who wanted to reclaim the past, who did not want to be submerged in memories with regrets, Philip decided to take Kikuo to his childhood home in Amakusa. Before dawn, Philip quietly entered Kikuo's house, avoiding the gaze of his daughter Masami, and took him on the journey. After a long trek, Kikuo finally stood in front of his childhood home. The old house had been abandoned for a long time, its walls mottled and covered with vines and moss. But this decay did not diminish the emotion in Kikuo's eyes. He stepped into the house, and distant memories surged forth. Every time he watched a performance by the town's theater troupe as a child, he would imitate the actors at home, performing for himself alone. This was the starting point of his acting career, the place where his dreams began. At night, Kikuo and Philip kept the lights on, reminiscing about the past, from the nervousness of his first performance to the joy of his initial fame. Each moment was an inseparable part of his past. The next morning, Kikuo went to an old tree behind the house and dug up the time capsule he had buried in his youth, which contained a photo of him with a woman. That was his first wife. Back then, he had resolutely left his hometown for Tokyo to pursue his acting dreams. But little did he know that shortly after he left, his wife would pass away. This unspoken farewell became Kikuo's lifelong regret and debt. At this moment, he gently caressed the woman's face in the photo, tears welling in his eyes, yet a smile on his lips. Being able to see once more the person he had deeply loved before completely forgetting everything was, for him, the most fulfilling ending of his life. Philip was glad to have helped someone fulfill their wish, but trouble soon followed. Having taken Kikuo to Amakusa without prior notice, Kikuo's daughter Masami, in a panic, reported to the police, accusing Philip of kidnapping. The company head, Shinji, was furious upon learning this and severely reprimanded Philip for his reckless actions. But Philip stood his ground, bluntly stating that Shinji did not understand what the client truly desired. Everything he did was merely to fill his own inner void. As if troubles were not enough, Kikuo suddenly fainted from exhaustion during the trip. Although he was sent to the hospital in time and was not in serious danger, Philip was detained by the police and had to clear the kidnapping charges within 48 hours, or he would be deported. Aiko pleaded with Shinji for help, but Shinji instead blamed Philip for his reckless actions, which had implicated the company, and refused to intervene. Shinji's indifference led Aiko to deeply doubt this job. Not all performances held meaning, and when work became nothing but cold transactions, it lost its initial warmth. Thus, when Aiko received another commission to play a lover apologizing to the original spouse, she did not cooperate as usual, but directly exposed the client's hypocrisy. He doesn't even dare to use a real lover in front of the original spouse. He only dares to hire an actor. She hoped the original spouse could seriously examine this marriage. Stepping out of the client's house, Aiko called Shinji and decisively resigned. She then teamed up with another colleague to impersonate a lawyer and visit Masami, trying to explain the situation and clear Philip's name. Unexpectedly, Shinji also appeared. He was disguised as a police officer, intending to exonerate Philip. It turned out that after receiving Aiko's resignation call yesterday, Shinji had thought a lot. Returning home, looking at the actors hired to play the roles of wife and son, he suddenly felt an immense irony. He had always thought he was helping others fill their regrets, but wasn't he also relying on false relationships to numb his own inner loneliness? Philip's reckless efforts to help Kikuo reclaim the past and Aiko's resolute refusal to go along with the corruption finally awakened Shinji. This job should not merely be a tool for profit, but should become a bond that connects hearts and fulfills wishes. After this realization, Shinji immediately fired those actors and decided to personally assist Philip. With Kikuo's testimony after his awakening, Philip was ultimately acquitted. Not long after, Kikuo passed away peacefully in his sleep. Philip was invited to the funeral, placing a photo of Kikuo with his wife from his youth into the coffin, silently wishing that the old man could reunite with his lifelong love in another world. On the other hand, Hitomi received a call from the school at home, and the moment she learned that her daughter had passed the assessment, she couldn't wait to share the news with Mia. But Mia's expression was calm, and instead, she opened a video asking, "Who exactly is Philip?" It turned out that day, Mia had inadvertently seen an advertisement featuring Philip on television. He looked completely different from the dad, who accompanied her to the aquarium and made crafts with her, yet it was clearly the same person. She watched that advertisement repeatedly, unwilling to believe that those beautiful moments were just a carefully designed deception. Faced with her daughter's questioning, Hitomi panicked. She initially wanted to find an excuse to hide the truth, but looking at the disappointment in Mia's eyes, she ultimately confessed everything, the reasons behind hiring Philip to play her father. After hearing this, Mia did not cry or question. She understood her mother's heartfelt desire for her daughter to succeed and also recognized the preciousness of that time spent together. However, Mia did not expect to see Philip again. Hitomi took the initiative to invite him to meet her daughter once more. This time, Philip reintroduced himself with his real name. He believed that he and Mia would become very, very good friends. Now, Shinji continues to run the neighbor rental family company, and Aiko and Philip also continue to work there, handling various entrusted matters every day. However, Shinji has gradually phased out types of commissions that might make the executors feel uncomfortable, such as pretending to be a lover or apologizing on behalf of someone else, and instead focus the business on truly socially valuable commissions. For example, providing companionship for elderly people living alone, or becoming a temporary yet warm family member for a child, just as Philip once did.